to have the chance, unhindered, to teach the time and what must be done to every black man, woman, and child in America. And after we teach that subject, then we should take a vote as to how many of us want to stay with our open enemy or how many of us want to be separated from them in a land of our own. The promise of God is a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, milk means you have animal husbandry. You have bees that are pollinating flowers. You have vegetation. You have land that is fertile, land that is productive. What must be done?
Thank you, family. We can turn the lights up and bring the screen back up. That should frame our discussion this afternoon. And I want to, by way of welcome, I want to welcome you to, oh my goodness. Yeah, here we go. I want to welcome you all to the Prince George's County Library. We have heard much discussion about the concept of separation. And in some cases, many folks think we'll have to go back to sub-Saharan Africa. And so what we did today to make sure that that was one of the possibilities that you would consider, we made it very hot in here in the room today, just so that you could entertain the concept of sub-Saharan Africa. But in the meantime, we want to welcome you and welcome our panel of guests and experts. And so I want to introduce them to you so that you will know them in the order that they will come. They won't come in this particular order, but I want you to know who you're looking at. One of them I'll introduce first in absentia. He is Mr. Ava Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad is on his way. He was held up, but he should be here within a few moments. Mr. Ava Muhammad is the bureau chief, the news director at WPFW Radio and Pacifica Network here in Washington. He is the former White House correspondent for the Washington Informer newspaper. And Mr. Muhammad is also the first, and this is an interesting historical note, the first registered Muslim to hold the position as editor-in-chief of Muhammad Speaks newspaper prior to 1975. So he'll be with us in just a few moments. I want to make sure you all know who's here. That gentleman at the end of the table in the bow tie came to us today all the way from the city of Waxahachie, Texas. He is known to many of you who keep up with social media and on the internet. His representation of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has been bold, unstinting, uncompromising, and consistent. We welcome him to the Mid-Atlantic region and certainly to Prince George's County. My dear brother, Brother Ben X, give him a round of applause. Welcome him. Seated next to him is our brother and my brother, who is the founder and curator of the website and online presence called I Mix What I Like. It is a cultural, intellectual, academic, and struggle site for us to learn more about what we need to do. You may remember him during his tenure as a professor at Morgan State University. He's here with us today as a brother, an expert, and an advisor. Let's welcome Dr. Jared Ball. He's here with us today. There he is. Seated next to Dr. Ball in our middle section here is the sister that you affectionately call the doc from the top of the clock. She is the physician, the activist, and our sister in ministry in Philadelphia, Mosque number 12 in Pennsylvania. That is Dr. Sophia Shabazz. She's with us today. I think you know the lady in the blue. We're going to come to her last. All right? This gentleman seated next to me is my dear brother. He is the Mid-Atlantic Regional Representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam, the veteran soldier who has been on the front lines of this battle for more than 4 decades. He deserves our respect, our honor, and our esteem. He is Brother Abdul Qadir Muhammad. Said I would save her for last. She is the national spokesperson for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. She is professionally an attorney and a minister. but she is more than that spiritually, all of our sister. A bold warrior, a fighter in the cause of freedom, justice, and equality. She's with us today to discuss this issue, separation through independence. Let's give a rousing Prince George's County welcome to Dr. Ava Muhammad. Throughout the meeting, there may be others that we would tend to recognize and acknowledge, and those parts of the meeting we want to make sure we follow them through. But we have many dignitaries, many important people here in assembly, and other folks are on their way. We had to experience a feint, F-E-I-N-T, feint, from the weatherman today. The weatherman told you it was going to be a snowstorm. Ain't been a drop of snow. But he told you it was going to be, you better not come out there to see Sister Ava, it's going to be snowing out there. And so many of us are still on the way. They took the fake, they took the head fake, but they're trying to recover and they can't. So we're welcoming them on the way back. But this gathering of only a couple of hundred people is designed to be a discussion to make this issue more clear than it ever has been. And so we welcome you, Dr. Ava. We welcome this panel of experts because we want to have a discussion and the dialogue among you, the people. Bear with me, family. Here in Prince George's County. Now, my time at this podium is winding up and coming to an end. I want to introduce you to my fellow co-hosts for this afternoon's program. But I got to tell you, in this county, Prince George's County, you know, this is an interesting place because it is a place that has become more and more representative of the condition and even some of the aspirations of black people in America in this early part of the 21st century. Of all the major sized counties in America, this is the largest black majority county. This county, Prince George's County, is said to have had the highest income among black people. That income is somewhat subject to question because your income here is not entrepreneurial income, it's employment income. It's paycheck to paycheck income. It's I'm maxed out with credit income. It's I got 2 cars in the garage of my mansion in Mitchellville, but Lord knows if I don't go to work Monday, it all could end. Okay? That's the kind of thing we have here in Prince George's County. So we're working to make sure we can do something different and better here among a group of people that have a vested interest in doing something for ourselves. So brothers and sisters, let's bring them to the microphone this time. She's going to direct us how the program will move forward. We'll be coming back and forth, but she is also an activist, also a professional, also a Muslim who's a fighter in the cause of freedom, justice, and equality. She is the executive producer of the Ask Dr. Ava radio program, heard every Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on Blog Talk Radio. And you may hear her name all the time, but now you'll get a chance to see her face and meet her in person. Let's welcome Sister Ava Muhammad to the microphone.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak as long as Brother Jamil did. We have to get right to it. I'm going to start off by saying, however, in the name of Allah, beneficent and merciful, I bear witness there's no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I'm a little nervous because, as Brother Jamil communicated, I like to be behind the scenes. I came into the nation a very long time ago, working right with Brother Kadir as his secretary, so I came in under the right person at the right time. I only know what to do, which is work. Okay? So I want to welcome everybody here, and I want to say that I'm grateful to see the youth here. Not those of us like myself who think we're young, but really the actual youth who are here. Because you are the reason why we're here. It's not a coincidence that we're meeting here in a library, because when you come to a library, what do you come for? To gain knowledge. The knowledge that you're going to get in this room is going to change your life. We're experiencing, or not us, but most, unfortunately, Brother Jamil spoke about this county and the wealth. However, it's being controlled by a person who now has a government shutdown. When we do what we need to do after we leave this room and we establish which a government that's really already established, but when we do the work to get it up and running, we won't have to worry about a reality TV show person controlling our livelihood, our happiness, and our day-to-day operations of our businesses, our homes, and really dictating our children's lives. So I'm saying you're in the right place at the right time. I'm going to say welcome again. You're going to see me moving back and forth. I'm a bit of the timekeeper. We have each panelist has 5 minutes to open up. They're going to do their opening presentations, and then we're going to move right into the program. I have note cards here. I'm going to pass these out to you all because we want to hear from you. The idea is that you all pose questions, comments. What does separation look like in practical application?
That's right.
That's what we are here to present for ourselves, because there's some of us who are still on that line. So we need for it to be a surety. As sure as I'm standing here, you need to be as sure when you leave out these doors that your next step needs to be or should be putting your wheels in motion to physically separate. Okay,
That's
but
right.
first we have to mentally separate, and we know the body follows the head. Once the head gets it, then the body moves out, and that's all we need to do, okay? So again, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Brother Jamil so that then he can allow each panelist to do an introduction. I'm going to pass out the cards, and we're going to get started, okay? So thank you all again, and welcome. I'm late.
Okay, family, this is simple. We're going to begin with the 5-minute opening statements. Don't think that's the last you'll hear from each panelist, but each panelist is going to make a statement of their position at the beginning of the talk. Then we're going to hear from Dr. Ava. She will lay down the main keynote lecture. And then after that, during the dialogue among all of us, we'll have questions and answers, and then we'll have some action points, asks, real directives. Okay? So that's going to happen here today. Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
Everybody good? Why you look so grim? You all right? No, yeah, okay, good. Yeah, we about to leave. I mean, we're about to roll us out this joint. We finally get a chance to go. And that's a good thing that we should keep in mind. We finally get a chance to go.
That's right.
Now, all of us been reading Without Sanctuary, and we have it on our coffee table. We see the lynchings and the burnings and the hangings and the rapes and the robbery and the murder. And we see the police shoot down Mike Brown's body and leave him in the street for 4.5 hours. We watched them kill Eric Garner on video and then get away with it and walk scot-free. We see Sandra Bland going out for a job to start a new life and ended up dead in a jail cell somewhere in East Texas, and nobody has to pay for it. Our lives have been worthless for too damn long. And now we have to decide to do something different. Now, if you don't feel it, I feel it enough for you. So I feel it, okay? And I'm going to make sure that I do everything in my power to work to make this happen. Is that all right? Here will be from our brother Ben X. Again, he comes to us from Waxahachie, Texas. Brother Ben, please, your statement at this time. Here's the microphone with Brother Hassan. All right?
Yes, that's one thing, being the youngest one on the panel, huh? In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah. Muhammad is his messenger. I'd like to greet you all with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. A little bit about me. I am just simply a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He is my spiritual father who woke me up to the knowledge of self to want to even share anything with you all, because before that, I was just a little young brother who played basketball, who thought I was going to be playing basketball until I was 80 years old, until I couldn't walk anymore. But I found that being number one or being top in this nation and giving life to the dead in this nation is far more better than being 15 in the nation playing basketball. So I felt a lot more gratification out of giving our people life and giving our people knowledge, wisdom, and understanding than, scoring 40 points and 10 assists. So when I came into the Nation of Islam, I was in college playing basketball, and a brother named Brother Malik Muhammad came and spoke to me about the role of the male and the female. And after I heard that, I asked him to become my mentor, and he began to bring me into the teachings. Now, around that time, the minister was doing the Time What Must Be Done lecture. All I knew was basketball, so when the minister was talking about Syria and overseas, I had no idea what he was talking about. But when he was breaking down the Bible in his lectures and the interviews and things of that nature, everything made sense to me. Breaking down the metaphors, breaking down what everything meant. In MySpace days, you say your favorite book is the Bible, but as Brother Nuri said, we say we love the Bible, but all we do is go by the Bible. He said we say we go by the Bible, we're not actually reading, we're not going in to find out what it's really talking about. So when I got to college and I heard the minister say that debt is slavery, I ended up dropping out of college, you know, because I wasn't finna stay there learning something that I can learn on YouTube or Google, you know, Google Academy or YouTube University where I can teach myself how to do something. So that's how I began to even teach myself how to do videography. That's how I taught myself how to make my own videos. Everything was self-taught. They was in there trying to teach me how to do some old stuff like cut tape to edit, which had nothing to do with me and what my field was. So I was confident enough just by listening to the minister go ahead and leave college and depend on the God within me. And by the grace of Allah, I've been able to do that while covering all the bills, not asking my wife to cover anything now for going on 4 years now. Go ahead. I heard the minister say one time that it's separation or death. And when I think about death, and I want you to kind of get the picture as well, somebody in the death or that's in the casket, they have clothes on, they have shoes on, but we have to ask the question, did they clothe themselves? If they put themselves in the casket, are they the ones who carried themselves to the grave? So the same way they aren't doing anything for themselves in the casket, that's how some of us are. So when I think about separation of death, I'm thinking that we have to do for ourselves, because if we don't do for ourselves, we are in a dead condition mentally and spiritually. We're not clothing ourselves. We're not feeding ourselves. We're not educating ourselves. And we know anybody who's not willing to treat us right, sure ain't going to teach us right or give us the answers to get out of the slavery or the condition that they have put us in. So when it comes to that, I'm thinking about separation in everything that we do. I think we should think about separation. And if your child is going to school somewhere, how can I separate? If I'm still working on the job, how can I apply the still away method that the minister gave to us? If I'm still buying other people's clothes, I was so excited to see the other day the MGT went over to China and got their own sewing machines, but all of the sisters are learning how to sew our own clothes. So we ain't got to worry about going to Nike and getting other designer clothes. If you ask me, the clothes y'all making, that's the real designer clothes for us. So that's what I was so excited about. And lastly, I end with this. Many of us who are still in school, as she mentioned that the youth is here, we learned about during February that Martin Luther King had a dream. And you know we have dreams when we're asleep. But why don't they teach us about the Martin Luther King in 1968 who was talking about that dream I had that day has turned into a nightmare? Why don't they teach us about the one who said, I fear I've integrated my people into a burning house? So they teach us about the one in 1983 that talks about integration, but as the minister said, when they allowed us to come into their hotels, our hotels closed down. When they allowed us into their restaurants, our restaurants closed down. So we believe in separation, not segregation. And the minister says separation is basically where we're not going to depend on other people to do for us. We have the power to do for ourselves. That is my opening remark. Assalamu alaikum.
And now Dr. Jerry Ball.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, it's a privilege to have been invited to participate in this, and I see and I claim him as a jegna of my own, Ava Muhammad, walking in. There he is. Taught me a lot while working at PFW and lovingly would tighten me up when I would make errors on air. I always appreciate that. But primarily, I'm happy to be here because, in general, I'm happy to participate in any conversation with any group of African, Black, radical people who want to have a conversation that we aren't allowed to have or supposed to have or sanctioned to have. Whether or not we always agree is, to me, almost irrelevant. It is that we're having the kinds of conversation and discussion that, again, is unsanctioned. And this is my profession is media studies, and what we do when we have these conversations is engaged in unsanctioned communication. And I think that's essential for any people trying to figure out a way to freedom. All I have really when considering a question of separation is a series of questions and concerns. I really don't have an answer. I don't know how this is going to work. It is not yet, from my understanding and reading of the contemporary world or history, has not yet been successful. And it certainly has not been successful in mass or spread when we do see successes have occurred historically. They're often isolated. That is, when groups, whether it's a Maroon attempt or an attempt at independence, whether it's Cuba or any African independent nation, or attempts within the United States for African descendant people or colonized people to seek freedom. They're all isolated success stories to the extent that they are, and this was always part of the problem faced by so-called internationalists. So when we, I always think when this question comes up, I think about the Cuba example. Not only in Cuba's relationship in supporting the black liberation struggle in this country and being punished for that, and housing our exiled political prisoners, but in demonstrating an example of what happens when a group of people who are tied to a global colonial relationship try to break free from that relationship. And I think these are things that we have to consider as we would try to do any form of that here. I think we do always have to, so the first thing I wanted to say was in relationship to this question of separation, is that in effect we already are separate. Whatever has been occurred, whatever changes have occurred since the 60s with the legal realities, in the lived experience, in the social experience, in the economic experience, in the racialized experience, black life is already separate. As has already been said, and will be, I'm sure, said and discussed repeatedly, that separation just doesn't have a power equality. It's a colonial separation. So this is what continues to this day. It's harder to, I think, see than ever because of popular media, the effect of propaganda, the internet in particular, which many people always forget is military technology. It was not developed to inspire or ease the process of liberation. But it confuses our economic reality, what it means to be connected colonially to the society. So when I think about separation, how do we separate? How would any group separate? Because you could physically, geographically, the separation already occurs. Wherever black groups move, white people leave. It even happens at libraries. It certainly happens, in neighborhoods. The question again is, well, what is the relationship to that community to the broader economy? And as I'm arguing, at least it remains a colonial one. As Marisa Baradaran writes in her brilliant book on the color of money, I think or color of banking, I always get that confused. You can separate people, but you cannot separate money. And what allows capital formation to evolve and expand and become powerful is its ability to penetrate and to move beyond the boundaries of any particular community. So no community can rest on the circulation of income within its own community. No group survives on that. You have to become imperial by investment and control of economies and labor elsewhere. So this is something I'm always wondering, how is this going to work? Huey Newton was correct when he said that we have no nationhood or nation to which we can decolonize. I'll have to stop there. The penetration of communication past boundaries is what connects us in many ways intellectually beyond just the economic relationship. And I think that's something we would have to consider. So there's many more things that would have to be brought up, but we'll have to stop there. So I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Now, we'll hear from, and using the prerogative of the chair, what we're going to do is hear from Dr. Shabazz, then we'll go back to Brother Askia, and then come to Brother Minister Kadir, okay? Now we'll hear from Dr. Sophia Shabazz.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I'm glad and honored to be on such a panel as this. In many ways, I feel that this particular discussion is not really my core area of expertise, although being in the field of medicine, it's critical in the function of any separate state or territory or any independent existence as a people. And another thing that I think is relevant when it comes to our health, our survival or existence in our current conditions has negative health effects. The stress alone of racism, they looked very recently, it was NPR, Harvard, and I think Robert Wood Johnson did a study of some sort where they determined that the chronic stress of racism causes us to have more heart disease, lower birth weight, And we already know that across income, we have poor quality of care. And this is, I'm in a lot of different circles in my field of work, even amongst physicians. We have our discussions where as physicians, we experience poor quality health care, even when we're interacting with the healthcare environment. And I think that over the last, I guess that was last year, when everyone was so excited about this Wakanda and Black Panther and watching the movie and how media and those emotional images are so important, but it resonated with so many people, the idea that we could have our own community, but one where we weren't suffering, we weren't lacking for anything, we had the resources that we needed, the economics and the unified leadership that I think are key components of what hinders us from going to this sanctuary space. And I would say, just as a testimonial, having come out of that environment voluntarily. I have an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering. I've worked in a corporate environment. I've worked in a hospital environment in a well-regarded institution, and still, probably because of my upbringing, but also just working in that environment, had a personal discomfort of just being outside of my natural space. And taking the leap to step out of it and accepting the consequences that go along with it, which, for myself are mainly economic, but we have to be willing to give up something in order to attain or obtain this utopia or this sanctuary space that many of us would like to do if we could work together collectively to work out the kinks and alleviate our fears. And I just would want and pray for all of our people that we don't wait until things are so dire that we have no choice, that we have an emergency that causes us to have to get up and go unprepared, when we have the time now to have these open discussions and plan. They say proper planning prevents poor performance, or you could add the extra P in there. If you were in my household. But we have the opportunity now to have these discussions and prepare and to think with open minds. And what you were saying, brother, you said it hasn't been successful, but I think we always overlook the most glaring example, which is the United States of America and the Declaration of Independence. And they say, well, wait a minute. Anytime you have undergone this much suffering and all of these abuses, let me list them for you, we don't have a choice but to throw off this government and to adopt our own. We can use the model of the country that we are clinging to so dearly to establish our own independent state.
Thank you, Dr. Shabbat. Before we go to Brother Ava Muhammad, a couple of quick housekeeping points. Brothers and sisters, please, no recording. No recording, no uplinks, no Facebook, no YouTube, no Tumblr, no Instagram, none of that, okay? Because we want to make sure that that's a controlled output. And you will be able to see it there, but we want to make sure that it's approved by the Office of the National Spokesperson before it goes out. Is that okay? Yes. So we're going to ask everybody's cooperation with that. Also, please be reminded that as you come into the room, we welcome a couple of recent arrivals. As you come into the room, there are index cards being passed out, so that as you hear from Dr. Ava, you may have a question that's specific to the instructions that she gives. Please feel free to ask your question at that time on the card, and we'll make sure that we have that to add to the discussion. So, as more and more of our friends and family come into the room, some all the way from the south side of Chicago who happen to be Cub fans. I don't know how that happened, but people are gathering from all over, so we want to welcome them. Now, Brother Ava Muhammad. Brother Ava.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. I'm honored to be in your company on this panel. And among such distinguished thinkers and intellectuals as on the panel and as yourselves. And I'm reminded as I thought about coming in, Pacifica Radio, WPFW. In 1961, Brother Malcolm X did an interview on Pacifica radio station WBAI in New York City. And he made a profound observation. This was 1961, 7 years after the Brown v. Board decision. And he said, now, 7 years after Brown v. Board, the schools are only 1% integrated. At this rate, it'll take 100 years for the schools to be fully integrated. Now, that interview was given 58 years ago, and the schools are still 4 or 5% integrated, which means, according to that timetable, integration is going backwards. Now, I mention that because at that time, the questions were integration, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad put on the table, and no integration, integration and segregation. And the racists in our society defined it as integration or segregation. Now, Elijah Muhammad said, no, we want separation.
That's right.
We want our own territory. We do not want to be governed by these wicked people.
That's right.
And so, some of us agreed with that or accepted the teaching for any number of reasons, but still, as time has progressed, that is the viable alternative to, since integration has failed.
It's failed.
Integration of the schools took place. 30,000 Negroes lost their jobs across the South in teaching when the schools were integrated.
Man.
Yes. Integration was a disaster for us in many ways.
Man.
Now, I have to offer a word of caution because we're really dealing with wicked people.
Say
No
it.
other way to say it. To a native person who said, you know, the native people receive payments from the United States government because the 573 tribes ceded after being massacred by these wicked people. They agreed in treaties to give over the land, 500 million acres of land, to the United States government.
Man.
What's the United States government gave to white people for, what do you call it, what do they call
Homestead
it?
exemption.
Land,
Land grants.
They gave away land grants and all kind of other things. They gave it to white people, but they took it from the Indians who voluntarily ceded it in exchange for treaties they said would be in effect as long as the grass may grow, as long as the rivers flow, as long as the winds may blow. And immediately, these people violated those treaties. So you don't have to be a scholar like my brother here, or Dr. Sophia, or Brother Kadir, or Dr. Ava, or a young brother here to know. You just be watching cowboy movies like me and know that the Indian said, white man, he'll speak with forked tongue.
That's what it said.
That's right.
Him be big liar.
That's right.
Him a liar. Do not believe him. And so today we see a hardening of the ground around the white empire, the white tribe, and Donald J. Trump, the president, sort of represents that. The white tribe is making a comeback, going to be great again. And so that white people in this society see their influence, their dominance, their hegemony dwindling as the demographics change.
That's right.
Their birth rate is low, others is faster, they're losing their juice. And so they're digging their heels in. So don't expect them to surrender anything to us. They're going to dig their heels in because if they met us well, they would have done right after slavery.
That's right.
But they did not and have not. So, final thing I'll say is this. Remember Walter Fauntleroy, who taught me a lesson that making a weaker demand does not get you any further with white people. In the 1970s, it was statehood for the District of Columbia. And he said, well, we don't want statehood. That sounds so militant. We will have an equal rights amendment, meaning that we have votes in the Senate and the House equivalent as if we were a state. Statehood requires majority of the House, majority of the Senate, signature of the president. In that time, you had a Democratic House, Democratic Senate, and Jimmy Carter in the White House. He said, no, we want a constitutional amendment which requires 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and 3/4 of the states to ratify it. Well, you know what happened to that. It went nowhere. We got nothing. Stick to the demand. If the demand is for separation, let's put that on the table and demand it.
Put it on the table.
We can compromise once we get our adversaries in a position to recognize that we are mean business. But don't make, as one brother said, make a concession without a demand. No, we want all, everything and reparations. Thank you.
Ava Muhammad, y'all heard him? Yes. Another round of applause. Okay. And unlike Nas, we may need more than just one mic. So we're passing it back and forth. So give us just a moment. We're going to make sure we make this work. Brothers and sisters, I want you to hear now from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. I say this by context, not just because he's my brother and my friend, but I have to say this, that the foremost voice in the call for separation has been the voice of the Nation of Islam under the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and now under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
That's right.
That voice has to be heard, and in this area, that voice is spoken through the lungs and with the heart and spirit of this man that you're about to hear. He is our brother, Brother Abdul Qadir Muhammad. Let's welcome him.
Assalamu alaikum. Just briefly, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, we thank you for his coming to us in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, intervening in our affairs, searching, raising one up among us to be God's second self. Of course, that one today we call him the exalted Christ and the Messiah, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Today, we're blessed to have with us one that you can touch, feel, and see, and that is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I greet you all with the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum. If you're here today, you started your journey on just becoming free. If you were sent here today by the agents from the FBI department, Homeland Security, you had to get permission, you're still a slave. Let it sink in, is that right? Whoever it is, you're still a slave. If you're married to somebody's wife,
Say
you don't
that.
want to be separated.
That's right.
You do not want to be separated.
That's right.
Tell her you love her, tell me you love her, but
Peace.
no, we got to separate. From part 48 of Time What Must Be Done by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he says, nearly a century after the founders put the slavery problem on him, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president, called into his office a delegation of 5 Washington pastors, who were former slaves. Listen to what Mr. Lincoln had to say. He said, you and we are different races.
That's right.
We have between us a broader difference than exists between almost any 2 races. You suffer very greatly. And many of them by living among us, while I'll suffer from your presence. If this is admitted, it affords a reason, at least why we should be separated. These pastors rejected Lincoln's proposal of aid for separation because these pastors that loved their master, they did not want to be separated from their 400-year-old, 300-year-old enemy. Now also, in the message to the black man, get this microphone right. Ava Muhammad writes on page 296, chapter, "The time is at hand." He says, quote, "Know that Allah is with us, the believers. And Allah has promised in the Bible and in the Holy Quran that if we believe and put our trust in Him, He is sufficient as a protector, that no weapons formed against the true believers will prosper."
That's right.
Give me a minute. Those so-called American Negroes, my people, he says, are now in a time when they must decide on life or death. The world we know, the world we have known is on its way out. You don't believe me? This is my part. Ask Donald Trump. And it wishes to carry you and me with it, but it will not. It will not. Ms. Farrakhan again on part 49 of Time and What Must Be Done, Separation, Independence. Dr. King said 4 days before he was assassinated, listen to his words. In 1863, a Negro was told that he was free as a result of being emancipated, or by the Emancipation Proclamation, being signed by Abraham Lincoln. But he was not given any land to make that freedom meaningful. It was something like keeping a person in prison for a number of years and suddenly discovering that person is not guilty of any crime which he was convicted of. And just go up to him and say, now you are free, but you don't give him any bus fare to get home, get downtown. You don't give him any money to get some clothes, get on his feet. You just let him go and he's free again. But again, this meeting already says to us that we're free. Is that right? Right. I thank you so much. God bless you.
Brothers and sisters, I want us to now focus on the part that we came to hear. It's there. This mic is dead. You killed his mic.
He's a microphone assassin. Okay. Right. So, brothers and sisters, the message that we came to hear, we're about to hear. I want you to receive our next and principal speaker to the microphone without any haste or delay, or I should say delay or any waiting. She is the national spokesperson for the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We welcome her to this area, and a special word of thanks is due her, because she chose to come here as a part of her national tour. We appreciate that, Dr. Ava. We appreciate that you came to the Mid-Atlantic region. We appreciate that you came to the Washington area, and right here out in the county. We appreciate that you came to be with us. We're grateful that you took this time, as your travels have taken you everywhere from Phoenix, Arizona, to New York City, to St. Louis, to Baton Rouge, to Birmingham, to various different other locations that you chose to be with us. We want to hear from Dr. Ava, and at the end of our program, we want to find out what specific steps we can take to not only support Project Separation and the initiative that we be free from our open enemies, but we also want to make it logistically possible for Dr. Ava to move around the country, because you know the Trump administration is not financing her tour. You do know that there's nobody in any position of authority with the world as it exists that's going to finance her to move around this country and tell you that if you put down Newport cigarettes, it's a revolutionary move. And tell you that if you put down malt liquor, it's a revolutionary move. Nobody else is going to finance her to tell you the truth, so we have to do that, and we hopefully will have a chance to do that later. But we want to welcome to the microphone now, at this time, my sister and yours, our national spokesperson. Let's welcome her to this area, Dr. Ava Muhammad.
Thank you, dear brothers and sisters. In the most holy name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, we give praise and thanks to Allah for guiding us to His straight path. Allah always, when a people go astray,
sends or raises up from among them a prophet or a messenger. And that prophet or messenger is always a member of that community.
That's right.
He or she looks, behaves, and sounds like those people. He never sends aliens or foreigners to a people. They're always from among that people. And we thank Allah for always showing His mercy, particularly in these last 6,000 years when it has been needed most. We thank Him for all of those prophets and messengers we don't know. We don't know their names. But we also thank Him for those we do know, and some of those who cross the boundaries of Islam, Christianity, Judaism. Among them, Moses with the Torah, Jesus and the Gospel, Muhammad ibn Abdullah and the Holy Quran. As a black woman here in America, in the land where my forefathers were held in bondage, I am so grateful to Allah for coming to us in the person of Master Prophet Muhammad, to whom all praises forever due. I also thank them that he encountered, not by accident, but in the fulfillment of prophecy, a grandson of slaves, one of the 6 million black people who, between the years 1915 and 1970, fled the domestic terrorism of the South. And so it was in Detroit, Michigan, in an area called Black Bottom. Not called Black Bottom because black people lived there, but because of the richness of the black soil there. They met, and we now know that young grandson of slaves to be, in fact, the promised Messiah of Scripture. I was not there, and I never met or knew or heard in person either Master Prophet Muhammad or the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But as a young lawyer out of law school, making money, having been reared in a middle-class black community, but unbeknownst to me, spiritually bankrupt, I became a victim of being black and white America. That invisible stress that we suffer from.
That's right.
Being the first black this and the first black that.
That's right.
And I was the first black female assistant district attorney in Queens, New York. Very stressful.
Man.
I knew in a very short time I was 100% unemployable in white America. And one day I was diagnosed with cancer. And I was told I had months left here.
Man.
Shortly after that, I was in a subway station in New York City on the Upper West Side where I lived, and I saw a poster. Truth crushed to the earth must rise again. Minister Louis Farrakhan speaks at the 369th Armory. I went, and I'm here. So I thank Allah for His mercy, His highest attribute in a man, in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I greet my beloved brothers and sisters. It is so wonderful to be here with family. I greet you in the words of peace of Assalamu Alaikum. To my esteemed panelists, co-panelists, and to Sister Rona Muhammad and brother, student minister Jamil Muhammad, who organized this, and we thank him and we thank the study group here in Prince George's County, and we thank our Mid-Atlantic regional headquarters for their support of this and all of your support of the work of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I'm here with my husband, Brother Darius Muhammad, my youngest wife, who I think is doing Facebook Live, and she loves filming, even in our house. us. I never know when I'm on film. So, but we thank Allah. You know, it's interesting, Brother Jamil, you talked about Prince George's County being the largest black majority community and the highest per capita income. And every city and area we've been to thus far, this makes the 9th one since June. And we know 9 is a number of completion, such as pregnancy and birth. And this is different because in places like Birmingham, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Harlem, Detroit, there's one set of dynamics. But here we are talking about, and Brother Jamil said it correctly, we talk about income, but it's not true wealth. And it is no coincidence, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said there's no such thing as a coincidence.
That's right.
Nothing just coincides if you believe in a supreme God. Everything is a result of his active will or his permissive will. And so Minister Farrakhan, in his historical press conference that he delivered in November of 2017, where he stepped to Donald J. Trump and the United States government. And he said, your time is over. It is our time now.
That's right.
Since that moment, you should never fear that you will not be successful in anything you do.
That's right.
The only thing that will stop you and I from success individually and nationally as a black community is our own doubt and lack of faith.
That's right.
Trust and believe.
That's right.
This is the fullness of time, and that's what distinguishes this movement from every other movement. Two words, God and time.
That's right.
Those are the two different things. This is not a religious movement.
That's right.
It doesn't matter if you are a Muslim, a Christian, Hebrew, agnostic.
That's right.
I don't know, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Teach Dr.
We are together.
That's right.
And we have gone throughout this country, and the Moorish Science Temple, the Garveyites, everybody comes back. We've had 2 of these in Baptist churches.
That's right.
2 of these town hall meetings. In large Baptist churches where they were headed by activist Baptist preachers.
That's right.
Jesus was a revolutionary.
That's right.
And so we are tied together, not by religion, but by a common ancestry, a common history,
That's right.
and a common experience,
Common enemy.
and a common enemy,
That's right. That's right. Teach
a
Dr.
natural.
That's right.
That's right.
The time of Genesis 15 has come. So it's no coincidence, since there are none, that the government is shut down while we're having this meeting.
That's right.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, Allah will make you safe.
Yes.
That's right.
Even though we're on the verge of collapse because we have failed and refused to accept God's plan for our salvation. Minister Farrakhan said on WVON radio a few years ago, black people are under chastisement. 1 week after he said that, Dylan Roof went into Mother Emanuel and slaughtered our brothers and sisters during a Bible study.
Man.
All because, as a people, we rejected God's plan,
Man.
which is that we come out of her. And you can't show me, beloved, in any scripture, biblical or Quran, where God's methodology, Allah's methodology is different.
That's right.
His same modus operandi, his MO, is whenever his people are going astray, And they are going astray because they are under the rule of the people who are in rebellion to his will. He always calls those people out.
That's right.
He says, come out of them, my people. Separation is not a racist ideology. As I've said everywhere, we don't hate, we separate.
That's right.
Separation is the creative process.
That's right.
Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. He called the light day and the darkness night. God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. So he made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it, and it was so. God called the vault sky. There was evening and morning, the second day. God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let dry ground appear. And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and gathered waters he called seas. He saw it was good. He said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kind, trees bearing fruit according to their kind. Yes. And God saw it was good. And he said, let there be light in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times, days, and years. And I'll stop there. In 1968, Bayard Rustin, the civil rights activist, and Professor Robert Brown had a debate. And it's in a little booklet, but I think if you go on Amazon, you have to get that little booklet from a third party. But they had a debate more than 50 years ago. And it was entitled, Separatism or Integration, Which Way for America? And I just want to lift something from that very powerful discussion, which was intelligent and thoughtful on both sides of it. But this is Mr. Brown, Professor Brown. I'm sorry, this is Mr. Rustin, who was in favor of integration. He believed that separation was frustration. And I want to say today, before we quickly get to methodology and strategy, that we have evolved past that. The concept of separation, as you saw in the book of Genesis, is the process of life allowing life. The baby's in the womb for 9 months. It starts out as a plant. All of us started life as a seed.
Right.
And the seed meeting the egg. Then we grew in our mother's womb and became a plant. We had a stalk, which is called the umbilical cord, attached to our mother's nourishment system. And that's how we live. And then we evolved from a plant to a fish, swimming in a bag of water.
That's right.
And then ultimately we became a mammal in need of oxygen to live. And so we came forth. Had we not, every single one of us, had we not come forth from the womb at a certain time, both us and our mother would have died.
That's right. That's right.
Because it was not Allah, God's intention that one life subdue another life.
That's right.
Or restrain any life from his divine purpose for that life. And so now we stand here. We've been in the womb as a hybrid people, the womb of America. And we will never be who we are until we come out of that womb and breathe air on our own.
That's right.
So this is not, as Mr. Rustin said, he said, I maintain that the turn to separation has been a frustration reaction to objective political, social, and economic circumstances. I believe it was fully justified that we feel that way, and this is not to belittle the desirability of fostering a sense of ethnic unity, but it is not the time to set up a separate state or talk about economic separation when those Negroes who are well off are the 2 million Negroes who are integrated into the trade movement of this country. Now we sit here 50 years later, and if we could reach back in time, we would let our brother know, no. Such is not the case. Now there are 9 million black people in America who are considered well off.
That's right.
But if we think we can educate or purchase our way out of being a subject people, then ask Mr. Bill Cosby.
All right.
That's right.
I just say that it is misplaced when you talk to your brothers and sisters who knew you were coming and said, what are you all doing? Oh my God, no. And yet you're sitting in a country where a president, a sociopathic, narcissistic, ignorant man who received wealth from his father's money, which he earned robbing people.
That's right. That's right.
With all of the real estate, and that's a whole nother story, but you need to read the history of Fred Trump.
Yes.
But he is a multi-billionaire. At least he claims to be.
Right. Yes.
And the reason he is in office is to protect the interests of exceedingly wealthy white people. See, don't be misled into thinking his only base is the poor, white, illiterate, racist trailer people.
Yes, ma'am.
As they call them, the Walmart voters. This is how white people talk about each other. Okay, the Walmart voters. All of this is like a big stage. And Trump is in there to protect the interests and to really rob not only us, but white people.
That's right.
But they're getting robbed with a smile on their face. Because he's saying to them, make America white again.
That's right.
So they'll let food, water, shelter, everything be taken away as long, I'll stay in the trailer park as long as it's white owned.
That's right.
But it is no longer the case that any of us are well off. And as Brother Jamil gave the sad situation of our sister Sandra Bland, who did everything right. And if you look at all of the murders, and these are by far nowhere near what's really happening. The only ones we know about are the ones where the victim had a family or someone who knew them who was not going to take this line down. But how many anonymous black people who don't have any connections to anybody, who don't have any leverage, are being murdered? Not to mention all of the other forms of genocide. So Professor Robert Brown, and also Mr. Rustin said, which is another comment we hear from our people, it ain't about race, it's about class. No. it's about race.
That's right.
Racism produces classism.
That's right. That's right.
Racism produces colorism.
That's right.
See, we wouldn't sit up and talk about who's light and who's dark if we weren't living with white people.
That's right.
They've been white ever since we met them.
That's right.
We have been niggers, colored, Negroes, Afro-American, African-American, but they've always been white,
Rocksteady.
no matter what their ideology.
That's right.
So what these town halls are about is not to persuade you, because you came here because you already have a disposition or predisposition for this.
That's right.
Because the time is being fulfilled.
Oh, yeah.
But, also sexism.
That's right.
Okay? Racism and sexism go hand in hand. Because in order to subdue a people and reduce them to the level that we've been reduced, you have to subdue the female.
That's right.
So the Bible talks about it. Kill the men and capture the women.
That's right. That's
So
right.
the breakup of the black family, and we were close before segregation.
That's right.
I mean, before integration.
That's right.
During segregation, we functioned as a family.
That's right.
So he states here, Mr. Brown, I violently disagree with Mr. Rustin's statement that class is a more driving force than color. It is a fundamental disagreement, for if he is right, the whole structure of my thesis collapses, and if he is wrong, his own is demolished. Mr. Rustin says, my separate nation is unrealistic, because that's what a lot of people say, right? That can have, where you gonna go? And if you go somewhere, they're gonna kill us all. Like they're not doing that now.
Really?
He said, I don't believe that white America is prepared to partition the country. Well, Allah's not asking
That's right.
for white America's agreement.
That's right.
He says, but in historical perspective, man's political architecture has proved it is mutable. Few countries retain their national boundaries century after century. Why should the United States fly in the face of all history and say our boundaries are settled forever? This is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Louis Farrakhan are saying. Listen, this is all about what men say it is.
Right.
So the minister told Donald J. Trump in that press conference, we'll take 8 states.
That's right.
He said, Trump is an anomaly. Allah, God, is the reason, beloved. Trump is sitting there.
Right.
His whole claim to fame and his pride and joy is the art of the deal. Some Pharaoh has got to negotiate with us.
That's right.
This is real.
That's right.
Don't hyperventilate when you hear separation. As Dr. Sophia said, this nation was founded on separation.
That's right.
Now, America didn't have a problem moving the Palestinians
That's
out
right.
of their natural land.
That's right.
That's right.
Now, this land does not belong to Caucasian people.
Right.
They nearly, as our people, as Brother Askia was pointing out to us, they nearly annihilated the red people who are part of the original family.
Right.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told Minister Farrakhan there will be 3 people who will share this continent. The black, the red,
And the brown.
the brown. He said there is no place in it for the Caucasian.
Right.
The minister told them at the press conference, there's one place for you that you are allowed. Well, that's true.
That's right. That's right.
Amen. But for the time being, as we move towards that, and this will be there for them, he said the one place you're allowed, listen to that, not belongs to you, but you're allowed to live is in Europe. Europe. So the next time some Caucasian says, if you don't like America, go back where you came from, tell them you first.
Yes. That's right. There you
go. You want to make America great again. We want to make the earth good again.
That's right.
And this is why nature is shaking the people off. That's right. Not only white people, but any of their black minions. As our regional minister pointed out, if you're here, if somebody sent you, I think we're going to convert you anyway. There's a genetic preference we all have for the company of our own company.
Oh, yes.
And as someone said, that's why Black Panther resonated with black people. It's not a question of did you see it, it's how many times did you see it. And Minister Farrakhan said, as long as we live with white people, we will live under white people. And I think after 450 years, we have to agree.
That's right. That's right.
Now, this is something that Professor Brown said, as I close on lifting from this debate. He said, the only thing that relieves my pessimism is that the white youth seem to be different from the older generation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a sign of hope. Well, unfortunately, Donald J. Trump was a white youth.
That's right.
He was a young adult. So we see what happened with that. Now, black values, why we need to come together. Integration destroys our identity.
That's right.
Even if it could be achieved, it is developed on the premise that we disappear.
That's right.
In the white America. This is why a Colin Kaepernick or Le'Veon Bell, who stand up and say, in one case, I can't play football and make millions of dollars and not take a stand, or at least symbolically make you pause and say that this Star-Spangled Banner and this flag, we can't do this anymore. Or Le'Veon Bell, who says, you're making billions of dollars off of me. I'm not going to take slave wages.
Come on.
And slave wages are relative. Well, he getting $14 million a year. He's also getting his body torn apart. He's also in a livelihood that has a very short span. We lost in integration our value system.
That's right.
We lost our black institutions.
That's right.
We lost our pride.
Me.
We can't even braid hair now.
Me.
Unless the enemy gives us a license.
That's right. That's right.
We used to repair each other's automobiles.
That's right.
Make each other dresses.
That's right.
We used to paint one another's homes.
That's right.
The black church made it possible for so many black people not to have to go on welfare.
That's right.
Because we looked out for each other.
That's right.
If a teenage sister got pregnant, our children didn't go into some system.
Teach, Dr. Ava.
A cousin, an auntie, the grandparents, or a neighbor.
That's right.
Took that baby and to give our children away. Now the brother says here, and I said I'm going to close this segment and then sit down so we can engage. He said, the storefront church in the Negro community is a unique institution of cooperation, love, and affection. Then there is the barbershop. He said, in my own barbershop in New York City, I can't even get a seat when I go in because it's always filled with roustabouts. It used to make me angry, so I said to the barber one day, why is it I come in here to get a haircut and I can't sit down because of these fellas running back and forth eating fried chicken and collard greens and messing the place up? The barber looked at me and said, man, you don't even know what this is. This is not a barber shop. This is our community home away from home.
That's right.
The barber told me most of the fellas that came in there were from North Carolina, or as we say, North Carolina, around Durham. None of them had a decent place to live in. They were getting their mail at the barber shop.
Me.
Chicken and potato salad out back. So if any boy from down home is hungry, he could come in here and eat. And the barber told me, I don't give a damn whether you like it or not. I am not going to ask my friends to stand up and leave because you're waiting to get a haircut. Now, you can say that's bad business, but it says something more fundamental about our way of living. See, we've been made to believe that our way is inferior.
That's right.
And Minister Farrakhan said the problem with white folks is their extreme consciousness of their whiteness. Well, someone in one of the town halls said, you know, we're going to have to unite before we separate. And my answer to her and to you is this, beloved, we can't unite until we separate.
Teach, Dr. Ava.
And I'll tell you why. And you'll bear me witness. Because mixed in among these people, we can't think an original thought and bring it into fruition without filtering it through white people's damaged perception of reality, which is that they are superior. So all of our ideas get diluted and we deviate from Allah's will for us because we have taken white people as a God besides Allah. So we have to make everything acceptable to them.
That's right.
And what is acceptable to him is unacceptable to the Lord of the world. Whether you are registered in the Nation of Islam or not, don't worry about it.
That's right. Don't worry about it.
Because you're a member
That's right.
of the Nation of Islam. Islam meaning submission to the will of God. Islam is not a religion. It is the nature of God, which is peace, and that's your nature.
That's right. That's right. Good teaching.
So you're a member of the nation.
That's right.
By virtue of being the seed of Abraham. Abraham, God talked to him in Islam, Judaism, come on, and called him his friend.
That's right.
We are the descendants, and as Richard Pryor said, God don't like too many people. Our great prophet Richard. Was he lying? No. Is God on Facebook talking about, oh, you're just clicking my friend, my friend. Some freak 50 years old pretending they're 19 and you don't even know that? But he said the reason he knows God didn't have too many friends, he names them.
Right.
Moses,
Right.
Aaron.
Right.
It's a short list. And Moses is in all the books, and Abraham.
Right.
So this is a little small dinner party here, because you can't just step to God and hang out with God.
Right. Come on.
But we are the ones.
That's right.
Our parents we didn't earn it.
Right.
It's like my daughter will tell you, well, can you clean the stove or can you do, oh my God, oh. You're not picking cotton.
That's right.
You're not in a tobacco field.
That's right.
You have air conditioning. You have heat. You ride in automobiles.
Right.
Okay? We're definitely not the ones that sacrifice. We're the beneficiaries of the sacrifice. I won't go into today. I'll talk about it tomorrow in verse number 4 a little bit about what brought us here. Because we're not some innocent Tweety birds. We're God's. We're the children of the Most High God. We did some things about 66 trillion years ago. Because we forgot that we were a God and thought we was the God. We're the reason that we get snow. Because one of our ancestors.
That's right. That's right. Come on.
Turned this planet on its edge.
But,
yeah, that's you, black man.
That's right.
Okay? The white man knows your power. That's why Francis Cress Welsing said they have a fear of genetic annihilation. That's right. They always say, I thought he was armed. I thought he was armed. You're armed, black man, not with a metal gun, but by being the primogenitor of all life.
That's right.
That's what you're armed with. You're original, and you're the father of everybody. And the black woman is the mother of everybody. So what they've done is an Alice in Wonderland trick of flipping the script. They are inferior. They're the ones whose brain weighs 6 ounces. And ours weighs 7.5.
That's right.
No people but us could have survived this. So now it's time to separate. And while we're here, I want us to take our phones out.
Listen.
You got your cell phone, I know you got. Because we spend how many billions on cell phones? And we got more iPhones than white people have? Yeah, that's a statistical fact. See, white people carry a flip top and get clothes from Old Navy. We gotta have design and name. We get ripped off and brag about it. I paid $900 for this shirt. Some sissy's name.
That's right.
Still wearing a brand. Put your name. Why don't you put your name? We walked in the mall. My husband said, "What is an Eddie Bauer? What is that?" Tommy Hilfiger called us niggas.
That's right.
That's right.
I hope there don't be somebody gonna put a coat on because I said it. But I want you to take your phone and I want you to text in all capital letters, separate. The text message is separate, and you're texting it to 31. Oh, that with the E? Yeah. It's SEPARATE. SEPARATE. And text that to 31996. Now that will connect you with Project Separation. And you saw some of it, you'll see more up on the screen. But we're organizing a coalition. And you don't have to change anything about who you are. All you have to do is come with us, because God has come to take us home. That's the bottom line. Yes, we want to go back to the motherland, which you call Africa. A white man named it that. The real name is East Asia. All right? We want to go back, and ultimately, our home is Mecca. Believe it or not. With them Arabs and all that, that's a whole genetic process that we put in motion. We did that too. We made white people. You know that. Yes, we did. And that's why they clone. They got that from us. Everything they do, they learned it from us. They just took it to another level. And we're told we cannot fathom the depths of Satan. And that is true, because every time you think Donald Trump is live, as bad as somebody can, he tells another lie. You know, he just said, he never said, he said he never said. Yeah, that Mexico was going to pay for the wall. He said he did. He said, I didn't say it and I didn't mean it. He ran on that. When he would fill those airline hangars with all them white people and say, who's going to pay for it? Mexico.
That's right.
Who's going to pay? He He said he never said it and he didn't mean it. You can't fathom the depths of Satan.
Go ahead.
So step one, the minister already gave us. And you know, when a man is guided by and through God, you have to pay attention to his words. That's right. Sometimes when Minister Farrakhan is speaking, you have to understand what he's saying to us that white people don't understand. You know as well as I do, they don't speak our language. Even though we speak the grafted language, English, we don't speak the same language. They don't understand what we're talking about.
That's right.
See, this is why the rappers rose so high in the industry, because their brain can't comprehend rap. So they had to step back a little bit, because they really didn't understand what was going on. And by the time they got an understanding, it was too late, because all through the 80s it was conscious messaging. But I'm saying that to say, the minister will say something that seems innocuous or agreeable. But you, as a black person and a scientist, you got to understand what he's saying. When he said, I'm calling for 10,000 fearless to make our own communities a safe and decent place to live, that's step one of separation.
Right.
See, he didn't use the word separation. He said you make your own community. We're already, as I think Brother Askia gave the stats, 95+% of this nation all live with their own race anyway. We're segregated. We just don't control our destiny. So most of us don't even have to go anywhere. And those of us that are moving not because we want to be near white folks, but because we want a better life. And we're confusing manicured lawns and big homes with righteousness.
That's right.
That's what the game they play on us. We're better than you because we live better than you. Well, they live better than us because we gave them all our resources.
That's right.
Why are our colleges historically black? Why aren't their colleges historically black? Is it because our colleges and universities are not presently black? Because they have invaded them in a subtle way? Now, there's an article, I gotta sit down. I gotta share, this is yesterday in the Wall Street Journal.
Come on.
Sky high prices hit hard.
Man.
And they call it Northern Manhattan.
Wow. Wow.
I'm gonna get a baseball cap. Let's make Harlem black again.
That's right.
I mean, when I go there now, oh my God, Disney store and all this. And, look at what this says here. In New York's Harlem neighborhood, 2 adjacent townhouses will be combined into a mega mansion with an asking price, hold on, $27 million. The resulting home is going to be 5 times the record paid for a Harlem townhouse. The record was set last February at $5.1 million. The average price for a Northern Manhattan townhouse is $2.5 million. It is unheard of, said appraiser Jonathan Miller. It's on Mount Morris Park West. It says in Harlem. Yes! Smack dab. The 2 houses were formerly, now look how they revise history or skip over things. They were formerly, because the real estate agent said that the property's history and its bones of the house justify this price. But here's the history. That it was formerly the Dwight Mansion, a Renaissance revival style compound
dating back to the late 1800s. That's when it was still predominantly white, according to New York's Department of City Planning. It was named after John Dwight, founder of Arm & Hammer Baking Soda. See, then they shoot up to now. Right? What happened between 1880 and 2018? I mean, just we went into the ether. There was a blank workspace. What happened? You and me. That's the home of Renaissance. Harlem is the home of the Harlem Renaissance. That was when our people came up from the Carolinas.
That's right.
Okay, and Virginia, and because being off the plantation from sharecropping, then they were able to think. And so you got the Langston Hughes, the County Cullen, all of the artists. And we joined forces and we invented the numbers game that they call the New York State Lottery, the Maryland Lottery. Well, they told us it was illegal.
Policy.
But Bumpy Johnson, you know, everybody put their money on this number, and whatever number comes up, that person wins. And guess what that person did with their money? They helped people pay rent. They fed everybody.
That's right.
See, the loss of our culture. Now we line up outside these Arab-owned, Indian-owned gas and convenience stores and buy these tickets. And it's always somebody from Idaho. Or somewhere in the hills of Virginia. Yeah, I'm going to get me a F-150, a couple of beers. I can go to the Super Bowl in person. That's what you're going to do with $700 million. But see, this is in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Wow. All because of so-called gentrification.
That's right.
Well, it's time, as my brother here says, black gentrification.
That's right.
Well, you go get an education, you get a decent job.
That's right.
Instead of moving among them to burn crosses on your lawn and look cross-eyed at your children, build where we are.
That's
the only
right.
difference between our neighborhoods and theirs is chain link fences.
That's right.
Versus a wrought iron fence.
Go ahead.
We built this country. We can't rehab and renovate
Yes,
and
we
develop.
can.
And the only reason they were able to do this all over America is because after they moved out of the cities in the 60s and early 70s, when we went off, you know, when we go off, we set everything on fire. Right. That's a whole nother story. We blow up stuff. Please don't be encouraged by that. But that's the history of black people. They know this, and so when we started going off and we had these insurrections after Dr. King's assassination and things were happening, they ran.
That's right.
To the suburbs. Now they're tired of the 40-mile commute. And so they sit in an office and look at a map. Let's go back here. Hello, there are people there. Right. Ain't no people there, just some niggas there.
That's what they say.
Don't they say it?
They say it.
All right, so
They
now
say
we're
it.
saying it.
That's right.
Because we want 8 states.
That's right.
To back me up, because this isn't the Ava show, to back up my teacher, Minister Louis Farrakhan. His teacher, Minister Louis Farrakhan. Go look in your Bible. Come on. Look in your Bible.
Yes.
When the children of Israel were in the desert, and God told them, I got land for you, the promised land. You do know that land was occupied.
That's right.
That's right. So you're looking around for some empty space for sale. No. It was occupied by who?
Giants.
Some giants.
Big corporation.
And the scripture said they had cities.
Yes, right.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told the minister, after the minister gave a speech, and it was some white folks somewhere, and he said he told them, I am so anxious to separate that I'm willing to clear land, cut down trees, work until I break my back. And when he told his teacher that he had said that, his teacher said, "Oh no, brother. We ain't cutting down no trees.
Go ahead.
Clear no. We did that.
All right.
Already. Come on. When it's time for us to make a move, they got to get out.
Brothers and sisters, as we prepare to move to the action portion of the meeting, one action has already been taken. Did everybody get a chance to text the word separate?
Did you get a response?
Yes. Good. Somebody in the back texted, "Wait, I love white folks." What did you get? No response at all. Right. So brothers and sisters, now as we move the meeting forward, there's a couple of ground rules I want to lay out for you so that we understand. Those of you in the electronic universe, those watching on Facebook Live, those watching around the country, give them a round of applause, brothers and sisters. But Dr. Ava wants to make sure that they get a chance to show the audience the size, the interest, the engagement of the audience, and that the place is packed, it's wall to wall and back to back. That's all right. Everywhere we look, we saw somebody blessed. So brother and sister, we want to make sure we move to the conclusion of the program. The first thing was the text action. You will be able to register for Project Separation today. You'll be able to register your name, your particular contact information, so that as the process moves forward, you will be informed and involved during that process. Is that all right? Yes, so that's a good thing to note. Now, as we move to the questions that you may have for Dr. Ava and the panel, we want to make sure that you know that you've been provided with an index card. Please make sure you jot your question down on it. Sister Rona is moving around the auditorium to pick it up, and Brother Jabril is moving around the auditorium to pick it up. You can do it, brother. It's okay. Move around and pick these cards up. If you have it signaled in your hand that you have an index card for a question, and we'd like to put that before the panel this time. Let me just add this, if I might. Many of us have circumstances which tie us to this existing system in ways that we think we can't share in our family gatherings. We think we can't let folks know that our job requires this, or our neighbors are really that, or you don't understand, my child's teacher is this, and so therefore I can't really say that. I know. I understand. Many of us have families that are comprised of members of various different racial groupings. I understand. That's my family. And so that's all right. But the people who are in your family, generally speaking, they are people who have enough principle to stand up for you and say what is right or wrong, regardless of their race. That's right. It's too late for us to be disrespectful of anybody because of their race, but today they must respect our program. And the program is inclusive of all of us in Black America and has the support of those in white America who are honest and fair and want to see good dealing. Is that all right? I want you to remember another thing. Black folks who are hipsters and intellectuals. And I want black folks who are religious and faithful to remember two things. Number one, there are some good people who don't believe in religion.
That's right.
I'm going to say it again. There are some good people who don't believe in religion.
That's right.
And there are, I'm going to say to the other group, there are some brilliant people, some intelligent people who do. The stereotype has always been that if you're religious, you ain't really playing with a whole jack. And then the statistic, the stereotype on the other side has been that if you don't have religion, you might be a moral cretin. You might be from the pit of hell and nothing you do ever has any character or integrity with it. That's false. There are people who don't subscribe to religion who will be with us in this effort.
That's right.
And brothers and sister intellectuals, those powerful political people, you must understand that some of the strongest proponents of what needs to be done politically will be people who come from the base of a true faith in the real and living God. Okay? So that's what we need to do. This question now is a continuation. Y'all ready for the question?
Yes, sir.
You all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay? We're waiting for Brother Askey to say, because he's real cool. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got that cool California. Okay. So we want to make sure this is the question. And this is continued. Okay. This is from Brother Khalil. He's age 7. Where's Brother Khalil? Who's age 7? There he is. That's his question. All right. We're going to start off where we got to start off. He said, why is it separation or death? Because what if black people rule over all races? What does colonial separation geographically mean? I think I got some help with geographically. I can't even spell that one. But the question is, why is it separation or death? Panel, anyone care to address that?
I mean,
Yes, sir.
only because the word colonial was sort of key to my thing, and I'll try to endeavor a response. For me, as my co-panelists have said, the proximity in the relationship is causing damage. One point I didn't raise is that, just to add to what's already been said, in my colleagues' work into the studies of social media, they have shown and demonstrated scientifically, as if you needed that black prolonged engagement with social media increases psychological and physical trauma. So we are literally sickening ourselves just by engaging in social media, because we heighten the negative interaction and then expose ourselves further to white supremacy. That's basically the science behind it. Sophia Mojanoble, I always like to raise these sisters' names in particular. Sophia Mojanoble, in her book Algorithm of Oppression, and Morgan Maxwell, whose research we've interviewed her with at imexwhatilike.org, talks specifically about this. The colonial pieces, the only point I was trying to make about that, just very quickly, was that it doesn't, my only point is that, and this is my concern about even with the 8-state solution, this is where I would love to hear more engagement, is that there is, and this is why I mentioned Cuba, there is independence, there is national independence. We have Cuba, we have African independence, we have Latin America independence, but there is, of course, the flag independence and then actual sovereignty. And those are two different things. You can be nominally free. You can have, and this is sort of like, the powers that be were very clear in the 1950s. Colonized people were looking to be free. They were fighting, they were engaging, they were erupting all around the world. So white folks started to reform supranational formations, whether they be things like the IMF or the World Bank or communication technology that allows them to penetrate any so-called boundary with their media. And it's very well understood that by those who control it, who developed even my so-called field of study, that the use of media is the primary mechanism by which the elite will rule us. So that's why I'm always concerned, like, how will this work? Not that I'm saying it's wrong, not that I'm saying it cannot happen, not that I'm saying the endeavor should not be taken up. But these are just some of the questions that I have that need to be considered. Even if we get 8 states, even if there is physical separation, as we see with examples all around the world, the colonial relationship, the economic ties, and the abuse of military and communication is still a penetrative problem that has to be addressed. That's what I was saying.
Okay, Brother Khalil, you got that?
I hope so.
I thought so.
It's a brilliant question.
Yes, sir. My brother framed this question. Thank you. And Brother Ben, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, on the question about why separation or death, again, as they said, it's not segregation but separation. And separation basically meaning that we're not depending on other people or white people to do for us what we have the power to do for ourselves. Many of us who have been married and are now divorced, so you may know someone who's been married and they've been in an abusive relationship. Now, she may be in that abusive relationship for 4 months, some of them 4 days, and you're already texting her saying, girl, you better get out of that relationship. You better leave him alone. But we've been in an abusive relationship for over 400 years, and we're still having the question of, why should we separate? But when you think about why that woman didn't separate, the answer probably usually is because he takes care of me. He's paying the bills, he's doing for me, and they're afraid that if they divorce them, that they won't have enough will or desire or a gift to do something for ourselves. So I believe that separation is important because I believe that's what God wants. When you look into the scripture, it says, come out of her, my people. That is separation. When it talks about getting in the ark, that's separation. So to me, we have to separate so we can be God's again, because as she said, the scripture says we are all God's children of the Most High God, and understanding the wisdom of the teachings and understanding that God is a being with force and power. Power is the ability to do something. So if we have to separate and do something for ourselves, because that is what's going to justify us being God's, not just talking it, but actually living it.
Now we're getting into the heat. And I want to let you know, if we don't get to your question, because there's a stack of questions, we have about another 16 minutes to handle questions, then we move into the business portion of our program, and then we'll be exiting the building. But if you do not get an answer to your question today, hold your thought and communicate with us by contacting Project Separation. Project Separation is where you will be registering at the table in the exit lobby. I want you to make sure you do that. Leave your name. We'll have the clipboards if you want to write it out longhand or if you want to add it into the computer. But we want to stay in touch with one another. We cannot lose contact with one another. And we need to know where we are. All right? Even if only we know. Just like the Underground Railroad was only known to people who was down with the Underground Railroad. Right? But we need to know where we are and who we are. And every time I see Sister Rona coming, I get a little afraid because I know I got to move faster, but I see her coming. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I want to make sure also, brothers and sisters, that we know that the question of separation is your right to ask these questions. It's your right to think this way. As Dr. Ava put before us, we have a far more compelling case for the idea of separation into a nation of our own than did the American colonists in 1776. They had never been shot down by agents of the British government and left to lie in the streets. They had never been lynched and burned and raped and robbed like we have in America for the last 400 years. We have a better case than the American colonists had, yet they declared their independence and were willing to defend themselves when fought against to take that away from them. What are we willing to do? It may not include that kind of physical violence, but it will include us getting up off our rusty dusty to do something for ourselves that we never have done before, all right? So let's set the ground rules and make sure we understand. All right, next question. All right, here it is. Okay, oh my gosh, here, I had it. I got it. No, don't worry, I got it. Here's the question. What is the strategic approach to designing or planning this separate nation in terms of economic, social, medical viability? And what role do supporters play? What's the strategic approach and what role do supporters play? Anybody want to take that on the panel? Yes, ma'am, Dr. David.
Yes, when Minister Farrakhan called for 10,000 fearless to make our own communities a safe and decent place to live, this is where you see the initial atom of life of sovereignty coming into existence. There's nothing spooky or really difficult in comprehending. It's a simple process, but it's not easy to do because more than anything, it's a mindset. And 50 years of so-called integration has gone a long way in making it difficult at this stage to see ourselves on our own. On the question of what a separate or sovereign nation looks like, we had the budding of that post-slavery. When we went out from the plantations with no assistance whatsoever. That's right. Illiterate. That's right. Where it was against the law in the South to employ us. And yet we went out and we built 60 thriving towns across America. That's right. And you know about places that gained fame such as Rosewood. Right. You know about Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Where, and that's all we're talking about. We're talking about planting roots. And by nature, it expands. See, what we're doing that's different from any other group, and that's why you see a Chinatown and Little Italy. And this is why the Mormons control Utah. Okay? It's a mindset.
That's right.
Every living creature has a genetic preference for the company of its own kind. So what we're saying is, we're going to be working on targeting neighborhoods or communities called ghettos, or the minister correctly called them, as my brother just said, colonies, where you have a subject people dominated by more powerful people who aren't even there. That's right. And that's what the ghettos are in America. White people aren't even there, but they keep us close enough to control our activities, but far enough away that we don't benefit from any amenities. And so, if we would begin to study how we did things under segregation, why did we have flourishing economic corridors in Chicago, in Birmingham, Alabama, and all across this nation? Because we gave no thought to anyone else serving us but us.
That's right.
That's why the most important aspect of this is the mindset.
That's right.
No Jewish family would allow you to stay in it. If you came home or came to dinner and said you had a black dentist, or you had a white Anglo-Saxon dentist, what? When your cousin Saul is a dentist?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That's true.
That is the state of mind we have to go. We have to return to nature. And by nature, bluebirds congregate.
That's right.
Redbirds and once you live together, you will shop together. We don't support each other's businesses for myriad reasons, but one is we'll go and set up shop somewhere that's not convenient to the black community. People eat and worship and shop where they live.
That's right.
And that's why when we get a little money, we move around white people. Because we're laboring under this myth that they know what to do and how to do it, and we don't.
That's right.
Oh, where will my flat screen TVs come from? Same where they get them from.
That's right.
This country isn't manufacturing anything
Right.
anymore.
That's right.
It's buying everything. So strategically, it starts with that. It starts at home. Go home and think on this. That's what you do. And lastly, a brother called my radio show on WVON in Chicago. He said, I live in Barrington, which is a very upscale suburb, all white, mostly white, in Chicago, with $1 million and up homes. He said, I live here, but I don't want to stay here. I want to be with my own people. But I got this type of job, which is what you just talked about, Brother Jamil. So I told him I would let him know when he called back, and the minister said, tell him to stay right where he is, where he works and where he lives, and begin to take notes. Think. See, the power is in your thought, which feeds your desire, which feeds your will.
That's right.
Desire is the food of your will. The will is the power that makes the universe vibrant and alive. It was a little tiny atom in the blackness of space that had a desire to live.
That's right.
It had laid there for eons with all the other atoms, but one atom, so it started spinning and making circles. And took 6 trillion years. The Bible calls it 6 days. The Quran calls it 6 periods. To come out into full existence, a man, a human being, a black man.
Yes.
Black because he's out of the material that he was in. And so don't underestimate what the power of your thinking. If you keep raising what ifs in your mind, or I can't, your conscious mind is going to do what your subconscious mind, your subconscious mind is going to do what your conscious mind says. So if you think consciously, I can't do that, your subconscious mind, or the mind beneath the surface, will move to arrange forces. So if the doctor says you're going to be dead in 6 months, if you buy that, and you say I'm going to be dead in 6 months, you're going to start writing out wills, you're going to start saying goodbye to people. It's all about a thought process. And as the original people, you are directly connected to the creator of all of this. That's not a racial concept. That's the reality of life.
That's right.
So the strategy is to create in your own mind the desire to return to your natural self. And stop letting white people on TV tell you what you want.
That's what we came for, Dr. Right. We came for that kind of boost. No, we came for this panel and this audience to interact. And that's what's taking place right now. This is a holistic effort among a people to be free. There is not a talking down to you from this podium. Nor is there some kind of demagogic demand by this crowd that you follow the will of the mob. No, in between there is the real balanced deliberative dialogue that makes it possible for us to move forward as a united entity and move as one. Are y'all all right with that? Yes. Give yourself another hand if you can. And Sister Rona come forward. She's moving forward. Oh, Sophia, you had your hand up. Yes, ma'am.
Well,
Go right
I
ahead.
wanted to, I guess on a, I don't want to say less spiritual note, but on a, I guess, practical or logistical note in terms of medicine or any other particular field, I think it's really important to return to a way of thinking when, I'm a staunch advocate for education and getting these skills and taking notes, like the minister said, whatever environment you're in, but we can't lose the thought process of how am I going to take this that I've learned. The objective of gaining these skills shouldn't be to get a good paying job. That may be a starting point, but we have to really make sure that we're instilling in our children and ourselves that mindset, because it really is a mindset that you can instill. That's why I decided I've always been uncomfortable when I go and get a job, because I have a mindset that this really isn't ultimately the purpose of acquiring these skills. And working on the pipeline, we have a pipeline problem in really skilled people. At least in medicine, we have that problem where enough people have to have the desire to go and invest in the time and sometimes money that it will take, or we have to be willing to invest in them so that we can have the things that we need, the skills that we need amongst ourselves. So I think that's definitely an important and practical point for us to stay on.
Yes, come on. Thank you. Pursuant to the comment by my brother, Dr. Ball, he said that when we're engaged overly in social media, we can actually become sick.
Yeah.
That we actually disadvantage ourselves psychologically and physically. Is that correct? And that we do that. I want to quote one of our great scientists. She's probably looking at this from her home in Lake Charles, Louisiana. She is Sister Ava Muhammad, the medical officer, CEO, and a great service provider in the community. She says that many of us look at integration as a means for us to get well from what ails us, and we forget that we weren't sick until we started interacting with them. That's what made us sick. And so social media, except for you guys that are watching us now on Facebook Live, right? You're healthy, everything's okay, and you're doing the right thing with social media, but the rest of it is a vast wasteland. So we need to make sure we realize that, okay? Now, we're wrapping up these questions, and I see Sister Rona has this. We need closing comments, and those closing comments will come, and they have 2 minutes per panelist. Now, the panelists are going to remain with us for a moment at the close of the program, so you can exchange communication information with them, but the main aspect of communication is project separation. Project separation is how you stay in touch with all of these panelists and others who are adding their thoughts, their expertise to this effort. their honest critique, and their open enthusiasm. See? Or even their guarded skepticism. It's all a part of the process that helps us to become free. And so we're grateful for that. We'll begin in the order that we started with the closing statements. We'll start with our brother Ben X. We'll come down the table and we'll make sure everyone has a chance to hear these comments, and then we'll act together to support this initiative. Brother Ben?
Sister Ava was talking about the colony and how they are pretty much in control but aren't there. So I think the first step to us separating, I know we want the 8 states and we want to separate physically and economically, but I think the first step or that's very important is to separate mentally from them first. Because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I was watching the old lecture. You know us today, we want to get AK-47s and just shoot them all and say, let's get them off the planet, right? Well, he said even if we done that, if we killed all white people, they'll still be in power. And you heard him recently say, you know, black, white people. And I believe that he said that every action is led by a conscious thought. Everything that we do is led by a conscious thought. So if they have control of our minds, they are still in control, because those who are in leadership positions, those who are making decisions for us, they will still have the white man's mind in the black man's body. So I think we first must separate mentally and then start to think about what we can do inside. I have a course called On Money. And the reason I say it's called our money is because many of us are chasing fiat money. It's money that's not even real. The only reason we're trading it is because we believe in it. So that our money concept is that you are money. You are the real asset. So instead of you chasing this money that they print off every day, chase the God within inside of you. Chase the God-given talent that's inside of you. Learn how to give value to your people, and then that's how we'll begin to trade and see that we all have value to separate, you know, ourselves. So that's what I have.
Our next brother Ben is our esteemed brother, Brother Ava Muhammad. Your closing, sir.
Brothers and sisters, I was recalling that it'll be 50 years in May when I received my honorable discharge from the United States Naval Reserve. I had reached the rate of E4, which is Jive Petty Officer. I had gone to Naval Officer Candidate School. But I was separated from the Navy after 6 years and about a month because I became a conscientious objector. I wrote the Commandant of the Navy and all those other people a 22-page letter saying I really didn't participate in the wonderful things that America has. I was locked out of that. I didn't get any of those benefits, and my people paid for those things. And now, the United States is at a point where judgment has come to the United States, and the United States has been found wanting in the eyes, I believe, of God. So I don't want any more of the future rewards of America. You didn't give me any in the past, so I don't want any more of what you got coming to you. I want to separate from the United States Navy. I want to separate from Caucasian people. I don't want your reward. God is not mocked. Whatever a man soweth, so shall he reap. Now, if that's true or not true, the white man has done wicked deeds to us and everybody else, and if he's got coming to him what he deserves, I don't want to be next to him. That's right. That's right. That's been my attitude. I haven't been able to effectuate it. But in the state of Mississippi, I'll leave with this. Chokwe Lumumba told me that in the state of Mississippi, there is a contiguous strip of counties, 18 counties, from Tunica to Hattiesburg, that are majority black, some 70%, some 90% black. That's right. Of the 18, 17 are majority black. Contiguous counties already. All they have to do is say, oh, why don't we have a Brexit, a Blexit, and have a regional pact right here along Mississippi's eastern border. We in one. Let's separate. I stand with the Honorable Ava Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan and with this distinguished panel and want separation.
That's right.
Now, Dr. Jared Ball.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. It's funny, I messed up my whole last 2 minutes because I had the same naval experience. And I got conscripted, spent 4 years, what I call a 4-year sentence in the United States poverty draft in the Navy. Got out early despite being invited because of my high scores and capabilities, being invited to do all types of things, but would have meant prolonging my engagement and be more involved in what the horrific nature of what the military does. And as Malcolm X correctly said, the military does internationally what the police do locally. So I learned a lot in that experience. And one of the things, so from that moment, and I'm at my almost 25th anniversary of leaving, I intellectually separated from the state, if not from white individuals. And I think that what that has taught me is this, again, I bring up this colonial relationship because the ability to rule from a distance is a great and pernicious power that involves a complicated nature, a complicated relationship of, as I was saying earlier, media and economics, which I think the brother makes is a good point, because economics, the fundamental point of economics and even the invention of money was social control. It was only invented to manage people's behavior. And as we all see, many of us put up with bosses and other things simply for the pursuit of money that we then need to get to material access to things that we were supposed to have access to from the beginning. So all I will say is that I'll just finally stop here by saying I think any form of separation is important, beginning, of course, with the mind or an intellectual separation. But any of them, any form of unsanctioned organization or communications we're engaged in here will require greater degrees of organization. Offline, off the record, without any form of communication for those outside the room, to develop the kinds of defenses and plans and strategies and tactics that will actually sustain any kind of move and propel it and make it functional and sustainable and successful. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And also now, Dr. Sophia Shabazz.
Well, they made any comments I might make much easier because I don't think there's much more to be said, but I'll quote what I believe is a quote from Nelson Mandela, that it always seems impossible until it's done. And to take action, whatever action you think is within your scope, whether that's establishing economic independence, reducing your materialism or the things that keep you tethered to the current system, those are things that any of us can take action on now, even as we decide on, getting more organized and organized leadership, because a government, nations don't negotiate with each and every individual within the group. We would have to decide who's going to be speaking for us, who are our spokespeople and representatives, and that's something that we've had a lot of outside interference, because anytime we try to say, well, this is who I want to represent me, you have outside people chiming in about who is and is not allowed to represent us. So those are important thoughts to keep in mind, but I think staying engaged, sign up at the 31996, separate, SAPAR, separate, so that we can stay engaged and continue these conversations. It's not, hocus pocus. These are things that have been done. We're sitting in a country where it has been done successfully from their perspective, so we can do it again.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Abdul Qadir Muhammad.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much again, Brother Jamil Muhammad. Now, many of us tonight, this evening, have we ever read the book, Message to the Black Man?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Any of us that does not have that book, you need to get that book. All of us up top in the audience, many of us, it changed our lives.
Yes, sir.
That book is a book of rule and principle. It gives you instructions on how to change your life.
Yes, sir.
Many of us here, you're looking at ex-dope things and stick-up men and sisters that did what they did, but look at what the word did for all of us.
That's right.
It changed our lives. Right now, another book that's very important. the fall of America. 62 chapters. It's falling right now. All right? Last one is this, The Torchlight for America, written by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Get that book, but there's a black hand holding that torch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Looks like, make sure you get it and remember it, because this book has it. This is the flagship in the fleet of the publications of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is ground zero. This is the Rosetta Stone. This is the Holy Grail. This is where it starts, right here. This is where the program is laid out. And there's room under this broad branch tree for all of your skills, your knowledge, your training, your education. Remember, the folks who know how always end up in the service of the folks who know why. I'm telling you, Mr. Muhammad knows why. And so we who know how should come and help Mr. Muhammad to put this program over the So, brothers and sisters, now time is on us, and we have to move as quickly as possible. Dr. Ava, will there be anything else before we go into the business portion of our program?
Very quickly, leaders will emerge. Leadership emerges. And if you study the 9 systems of the human body, in that you see the mind of God and you see what the system of government he has for the human being. Because in the 9 systems, the 10th being the brain, all of the cells work together to keep the organism alive. But every organ, every system has a role that is crucial to the rest, and they work in harmony and they're satisfied. Minister Farrakhan, I would say quickly, proved to us already that we can do this. Back in 1986, when I was a young Muslim, the then President Ronald Reagan was trying to start a war with Libya. And he passed an executive order or signed it. No American citizen is allowed to travel to Libya. And if you go there and try to return, you would be arrested immediately. That's right. Minister Farrakhan said, I have a book, the Holy Quran, and it says, I will follow your law as long as it does not conflict with my religion. But my religion forbids me to deny my brother in Islam because you say we can't interact. Right. He went to Libya. And there was a plan by the Attorney General, Edwin Meese, to have him arrested. So, Brother Ava Muhammad, who's now the General Counsel for the Nation of Islam, myself, and some other attorneys, we went to federal court with what is called a preemptive action. And that's where you file a lawsuit before the injury happens. You're saying that if you allow this to happen, it will do irreparable harm. And we didn't even have to win it. The U.S. government came into court and told the judge they're not going to do it. Simply on being confronted by us.
That's right.
The one place where there will be no infiltration, it's attempted, but it will not succeed. And the only place where you see the black man in his natural form and in power is in the Nation of Islam. There's a study I've got here from the University of Michigan real quick, talking about how black men die 6 years earlier than black women. How even when a black man is able to climb up the social ladder, society discriminates against him more.
That's right.
And that puts him at a higher risk of depression and ultimately death.
That's right.
The only place you see the black man in acting as his true self is when he's fruit of Islam. And that and by fruit of Islam, not a religion, but being the nature of yourself and the nature in which God created you. So again, this is simple, though it's not easy. It's not hard to understand, but what makes it difficult is when the brain, with those neurotransmitters firing back and forth in a slave mentality,
keep saying, we can't do this because of A. We can't do this because of B, C, or D. You were shown in 1995 that it can be done when one single black man called for 1 million black men in a country where we were forbidden to talk to each other, and called them here to the seat of their government. Now, what kind of display of power are you looking for? You're impressed with Moses and Aaron and what they did in Egypt. But what a so-called miracle, as our Christian brothers and sisters call a miracle. What do you need to see other than a black man make a call and black men, 1.8 million, with no alcohol, no drugs, no booty women, no chicken, no food. We did it all this, but it was not time now, as Dr. King said, now is the time.
This has been, and it's not even over, this has been a powerful session. And you agree? Yes. We learned a lot about what we should do, how we can do it, and the fact that we must do it. Is that right? Right. So now, many of you found out today you were fruit of Islam. You didn't even know. You said, wait a minute, I got to get a haircut and a bow tie. No, you got to live in your nature. And when you live in your nature, you're fruit of Islam, whether you know it or not. So when you go home, get in the mirror real quiet with nobody around. Just look in the mirror and look at yourself. And start calling a few real cases. Sisters, oh, the MTT is a fruit of Islam. Let me make it simple. It's not gender specific now. It's not gender specific, the term that I heard Mr. Parker say to me. He said the fruit is the best. The best is all of you, regardless of gender. That's right. The fruit is the best part of the tree. You're what's produced by the process called Islam. And that's why we're all here today. So I'm glad we said it. And the woman is the tree that produces that man, who is the fruit, and then the fruit goes back and produces another tree that produces more. You see the orchard coming in the first, right? That's why you and I are where we are today.
That's right.
You see, anybody can count the number of seeds in an apple. But only God knows how many apples are in a seed. Anybody, Brother Kevin, can count the number of seeds in an apple, but only the Supreme Being knows the number of apples in that one little seed. So we got a seed here today. Only God knows how great we'll be when we get up and go to make progress in the way of separation. Now, because Sister Rona's here, I feel her spirit coming on. She's like, yo, hurry up. So, these clipboards that you see have the petitions. The petitions state the following. We want our people who are descendants of slaves and who desire to live a righteous life to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere.
That's right.
Our former slave masters and their children are obligated to provide that land, which should be minerally rich and fertile. Right. We believe that they are obligated to maintain and supply our needs in this separate territory for 20 to 25 years until we are able to meet our own needs. We receive no peace after giving the best of us for 400 or more years and receiving in return some of the worst treatment ever recorded by any people. Our contributions to this land and suffering at the hands of white America justifies a complete separation in a state or territory of our own. You believe that to be the truth, hold your hand up. If you believe that to be the truth, hold your hand up. I want the picture. Hold it up, keep it up, because I want them to see it. I want them to see it all over the world that black people are united in the need to separate and build something of our own. Now take that hand down, put it next to your other hand, and give yourself a round of applause. But I would be remiss if I did not recognize some of the folks. I don't know all of the folks, but some of the folks who are here are the heaviest hitters in America. Right in this room. That's right. The National Archivist of the Nation of Islam is in this room with us today. Our brother, the student minister from Baltimore, Maryland, Minister Carlos Muhammad. The great separator.
liberator is here today. You know him as Louis Ali from the South. He drove here today for this meeting. It's he who supplied the banner, he and Brother John. Let's welcome our brothers all the way from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Oh, there he is. Hold your hand up, brother. Give him a hand now. And you and all of your experiences, you're all the best, the righteous, and the powerful. Never forget who you are. You are the best. That's right. You the righteous, and you the powerful. You can do it, and it will get done. Now, one of the other things that has to get done is we got to support this program. Those of you who paid for the $50 tickets, would you hold your hands up? No? Okay, and the $100 seats, did you? No. Oh, you got in for what? Free. You know ain't none of this stuff free. None of these plane tickets, none of these hotels, none of these expenses, not free, but this message had to happen. So I'm going to ask for your support. We don't need but 30 people to give $100. Then we knock out all the expenses. Then knock it down. We need to get it done right quick. If you want to be first, hold your hand up, especially if you're in an emerald green MGT garment and you're looking slick and you're in the back of your glasses. There's Sister Lisa for our time, $100. I'm going to do this quick. We want to make sure. Brother Troy, another $100 from Brother Troy 3A. Our dear brother, minister, soldier. That's two. We got to bring the receptacles up front. I don't care if it's a bag. Forget it. We're going to do it low key and make it happen. Just put it right there on the table. Sister Lisa, will you bring yours down here? She's coming to get it. Okay. And sister, your name? Sister, no, she didn't pass you up. I got you. What's your name?
Karen.
Sister Karen, or as we say in Washington, Baltimore, Karen. We need the swipe machine. We go to, look, we're from Baltimore. You know how we do with the ATM. If you have to go to the ATM, we got a Lincoln outside. Tinted glass. Comfortable. Air conditioned or heated. Ride you over to the ATM and back, playing the greatest hits of the OJs. You already know. Oh my God. So if you need to go to the ATM, we'll do that for you, and we'll make it happen. In the back, my dear beloved brother, the FOI captain and training and student captain from Wilmington, Delaware, Brother Ava Muhammad, $100. There's $400. We need to get 26 more. Sister Altamar, you have another $100. Hey. My sister. She got another 100. Why y'all mad at the sister? Come on. Give her a round of applause. Don't be like that. Don't be like that. Sister Rona, another $100. Thank you, sister. Right? Because we heard from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? That's 600. We only got 24 more hundred to go. Let's do it quick because we only got a few minutes to make it happen. Somebody else with another $100. Just wave your hand wherever you are. How many of y'all wish you had the whole 3,000 to give? Okay, good. We're on the same page. That means we're all together. Somebody with another donation of $100. And we got to get it done because the people want their money. We're going to pay them before we leave America. Take a little money. And Brother Richard, my dear brother, here in Prince George's County, because this man, stand up, I want the people to see. That's the man that does everything anonymously, hardworking, all the time. Brother Richard, Brother Kevin, these are the brothers and sisters that do this stuff all the time. And they do it without anybody knowing them. I want to tell you, I really thank Allah for all of you. Now, thank you, brother, that's 700. And don't let your hand go too far from your pocket. You might have another 100. Somebody else with another 100. We have 700 on the way to 3,000. We just got to raise the money. We need 23 more hundred. Anybody, just raise your hand wherever you are. Thank you, Brother Major. We needed to do that. You go over the door? Praise the Lord. Let's get raised up in this thing. Yes, indeed. Okay. Okay. So we want to review now. We want to review the names. Okay. From Sister Kern. Sister Lisa, Sister Altamar, Brother Captain McCann, Brother Mr. Troy, and Brother Richard. There's one more I'm missing. Who am I missing? And Sister Rona. I can't miss you. That's 7.
We have 23 more hundred to go. Who's the next person with $100? I see your hand, Chip. That from Brother Ava Muhammad, another $100. My brother. I'm sorry I put you on blast about the Cubs, but I had to do it. That's my dear brother from Chicago and D.C. and the whole world. 800 moving to 3,000. From Dr. Sophia Shabazz, wait a minute now, this is the help. Okay, she gave 100 anyway. Okay, there's another $100 from Dr. Sophia Shabazz. And Fountain Medical Associates. If you go to Fountain Medical Associates in Philly, you're going to get better. And you stay off the social media, though. You got to stay off social media. Right there, you got to stay off. Okay, stay off. So we're at 900 on the way to 3,000. Let's just do this and get it done. 2,100. I know you want to make it quick. We want to make it quick. We want to make it happen. We got a few more minutes before we start breaking down and rolling out. Because they want us to make sure that at 5 o'clock it look like a ghost town. Right. So we're going to make sure we just grab our coats and run outside and do like black people have been doing since we've been here on the shores of North America, and that is hang out in the parking lot. Okay? Another $100. Right, we're just going to hang out. We're at 900 on our way to 3,000. Somebody with the next 100. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Sister, be careful now when you hit the sister like that. Sister, it look like you're giving 100 now. When you do that, I saw your hand come up. I see the palm of your hand. You all. So be very careful. All right. Who has the next donation of 100? From Brother Anthony, another $100. Thank you, my dear brother. We just got 20 more hundreds. Or we can do it like this. If we get 40, 50. Anybody with a 50? Let's just knock it down. Let's knock it down.
Freedom ain't free.
It ain't. It sure ain't. That's right. It ain't. In the rest of the country, they say freedom isn't free, but she's from St. Louis. Freedom ain't free. Okay? So we want to make sure we have it all in place. Somebody with another donation now. I'm sorry, what's that now, brother? $100. Well, you know, is that the first 100?
No.
That's the second 100 from Brother Mikhail. Another $100. Thank you, brother. Thank you, sir. You okay? You want to give it to me? Well, okay. Putting $100 bills on the table. I really should. Okay. But we are trying to help our sister in this mission to do what needs to be done, and that's the issue. That's the issue. And we got to do it. We got to be unapologetic about it. Anybody got a problem with it? No, sir. Get mad at me. All right? I'll box you out in the middle of the street. You might get knocked out, but I'll box you. Somebody with another anybody else with another payment, another donation of $100. We're at 1,100, and we need to go. We're collecting 50s and 100s on our way to 3,000. Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
We're at 1,100 right now. Yes, ma'am. Uh-oh, here she comes. The fundraising juggernaut herself. No, I mean that. She is the national fundraiser of the Nation of Islam. I'm saving to tell you about her for the end of the program so you can leave on a high note. She said, nah, I'm about to get in this charity donation too. She's legendary all over the world. Y'all know Sister Ava Muhammad. You know her. Making sure that she does the right thing. Sister Claudia, what is that donation? Another $100 from Sister Claudia. Thank you. All right. See, and just like as my brother Nuri said, because Brother Nuri is doing this charity thing, he does a great job at charity. Okay? And it's a tough job, I heard. But Brother Nuri said, he said, when you see somebody doing something you wish you could do, you should applaud them. That's right. Because just like when you stand up in your chair at home, when you see LeBron take that windmill and slam that three, bam, you be like, yeah! Applaud him because you wish you could do it. Okay. And the people out in the hallway, Brother Kevin, Brother Mikhail, please remind the people out in the hallway that we're doing this here today, and they might want to be with us in this effort, okay? Thank you, dear brothers and sisters. Now, as we conclude, we're at 1,200 on our way to 3,000. I think Brother Kadir would let us stop at 2,000 if we just get there. If we just go on and get there and leave it be. Huh?
Okay.
I believe if we do that, if we just step up and do it, we can do it. We can just make it happen. All right?
Yes, sir.
So pass the peas like you used to say. Okay? JP's fans? Anybody in JP? No? Yes, ma'am. No. 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 So shut down social media because you put this on social media? Hey, social media, this all monopoly money. We don't have this. Hey, social media, before you go, this ain't real money, all right? We just playing, all right? We see, it's just a joke.